Some souls walk this earth carrying a silence the world doesn't understand. You've moved through rooms like a shadow, never fully seen, always slightly apart. Not because you were lacking, but because something within you never fully agreed with what others called normal. There was always a sense that you were different, not louder, not brighter, but deeper. You felt things others brushed past. You questioned what others blindly followed. And though you tried to belong, there was always a quiet ache. And knowing that your spirit was not shaped for crowds, but for something higher. This quiet ache is not a curse. It is the mark of the chosen. Throughout Scripture, those closest to God's heart were often the ones furthest from the crowd, misunderstood, hidden, even rejected. But in their solitude, God whispered secrets the world was too loud to hear. This message is for the ones who have felt out of place for most of their lives, who learned how to be small so they wouldn't be too much, who walked alone not by choice, but by design. Today, we will walk through the signs, not signs of being broken, but signs of being set apart. You will hear truths that remind your soul why it has always felt so different, and why that difference was never a flaw, but a calling. You were not made to follow the path of many. You were made to carry something sacred. And though the world may not have made room for you, God already has. There is healing in that knowing, and peace in finally understanding that you are not lost. You are chosen. Some people move with ease through the patterns of this world. They wear the right words, speak the right tones, fall into place like puzzle pieces, whole and welcomed. But there are others, quieter ones, who walk gently along the edges. They sit among the crowd, but never truly feel among them. Their spirit does not echo the rhythm of the room. Their eyes search for something deeper, and their heart resists the script they were handed. You may have tried to follow the same lines, the ones that promised belonging, safety, approval. You watched others laugh easily, agree quickly, stay within the lines. So you softened your thoughts, dimmed your convictions, tried on the language of those around you. But even when you looked like them, something within whispered that it was not your home. A quiet discontent stirred beneath the surface. It was not rebellion, it was not pride. It was the sound of your soul refusing to shrink. There is a holiness in not fitting in. Paul once wrote, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." That was not a command to reject others, it was an invitation to follow a higher voice. The patterns of this world reward sameness. They praise ease, but God does not shape his vessels with sameness. He calls them apart. He carves their path with silence, stillness, and often solitude. If your heart has always struggled to feel at home in this world's rhythm, it may be because heaven's rhythm lives inside you, and heaven moves differently. It values the unseen. It speaks in whispers. It leads not by crowds, but by callings. Many of God's beloved Joseph, Moses, Esther were set apart long before they were ever set in place. Their lives carried an inner echo that could not be silenced by culture, tradition, or fear. To be set apart does not mean to be above others. It means to be drawn away for something sacred. You are not broken for feeling like the outsider. You are not lost because you move differently. The ache of not fitting in is often the first sign of being formed by unseen hands for a purpose not yet revealed, but deeply rooted in God's design. And when the world's patterns no longer hold you, it is often because heaven's pattern is beginning to unfold. There are seasons when silence lingers longer than it should, when the ache inside grows heavier with each passing day, when nights feel endless and prayers fall quietly to the floor. These are not wasted seasons. They are sacred ones. God does not abandon his own in sorrow. He meets them there, gently, like a soft wind brushing through dry ground. And often it is in those places of pain where something holy begins to grow. Loneliness has a voice. It speaks not in noise but in whispers quiet enough that only the soul can hear. In that stillness, the masks fall, the roles slip away. There is nothing left but the rawness of who we are before God. It is in this honest place that the Spirit begins to shape, not with loud answers, but with a quiet presence. Not with explanations, but with nearness. There is a sorrow that the world cannot touch, a sorrow that is not empty, but fertile. It is the kind of sorrow God kneels beside. Jesus himself was called a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief. Not just so he could carry it, but so he could meet us in it. When pain becomes a teacher, it does not lecture, it reveals. It strips away the noise and shows what truly matters. It shows what was never real and what cannot be shaken. And that is where faith takes root. David was chosen long before he was seen. The oil of anointing found him in a forgotten field. He was not crowned in a palace, but in the quiet, among sheep and soil. And yet, that same shepherd boy carried songs in his heart that would one day comfort a nation. His pain was not a punishment, it was preparation. So often, the ones God uses most are the ones he hides longest. Not because they are not ready, but because what he is building in the dark cannot yet be exposed to the light. The wounds, the losses, the aching prayers, they become the very places God plants his presence. They become the soil for wisdom, for compassion, for deep and lasting strength. Pain does not mean absence. It often means proximity, the kind where God is closer than breath, closer than tears. He does not waste pain. He shapes through it. And those shaped in sorrow often carry a depth this world cannot give and cannot take away. Some hearts are made with thinner walls. They feel what others overlook. A quiet sigh across the table, the heaviness in someone's silence, the tear that never falls, but still speaks. These hearts carry more than their own weight. They feel the ache of others, even when no words are spoken. And though it may feel like a burden, it is in truth a sacred gift. This kind of compassion does not come from personality. It flows from the Spirit. It is the tenderness of Christ formed within a soul over time through trials, through waiting, through deep wells of quiet love. When Jesus looked at the crowd, weary and scattered, he was moved with compassion. Not pity, compassion. He saw beneath the surface. He felt the hunger, the confusion, the ache, and he wept with them. Those who carry this hidden mercy often feel out of place in a world that celebrates hardness. Their tears come quickly. Their anger burns against injustice. They do not turn away from pain, they lean in. Not because it is easy, but because their heart knows how to kneel beside the suffering. This is not weakness. It is divine empathy. It is what happens when the heart of Christ lives within a person long enough to shape how they see. There are those who pray quietly for strangers, who hold grief like a sacred trust, who sense the sorrow behind someone's smile and carry it into the night, asking God to heal what cannot be spoken. These souls walk softly, but they walk with heaven's weight. They are the ones who carry others, even when they are tired themselves. Paul wrote that we are to carry each other's burdens, and in doing so we fulfill the law of Christ. Some do this not because they were told, but because they were born to. Their very being bends toward mercy. They feel deeply because they were formed deeply. And though the world may not always see them, heaven does. A heart like this does not grow overnight. It is shaped in the quiet, in the secret places with God. in prayers no one hears, in tears that fall in empty rooms. These are the hearts that mirror Christ, the ones who carry love not as a feeling but as a calling, and when they ache, it is not in vain. It is the echo of God's own sorrow, reaching through them to touch the world. There is a hunger that sits deep in the soul, a quiet longing that church services alone cannot satisfy. It is not stirred by routine or tradition. It does not wake for performance or polished answers. This hunger reaches for something more. It aches for God, not in form, but in presence, not in ritual, but in realness. Some feel restless in places where others are content. They sit in rooms full of words, but their spirit stays thirsty. Songs are sung, verses read, hands lifted, but still their soul whispers, "There's more." It is not because they are hard to please, it is because the spirit within them was made for depth, made to walk in the quiet where God's voice still speaks, made to kneel where noise is stripped away and only holy silence remains. Jesus said, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled." Not those who perform, but those who yearn. Not those who know it all, but those who search with trembling hearts and open hands. The ones who stay awake in the night asking, "Where are you, Lord?" The ones who seek not just truth, but truth himself. This hunger is not rebellion. It is not pride. It is the Spirit drawing a soul deeper into the heart of God. It often begins with restlessness, with a sense that something is missing, even when everything looks right. But slowly, it becomes a fire that cannot be put out, a pull that will not release. It is the same hunger that drove Moses to climb the mountain, the same ache that led Mary to sit at Jesus' feet while others were busy with noise. Those who carry this hunger often walk a lonelier path, not because they choose it, but because few are willing to seek that far or wait that long. But in that waiting, God comes near. Not always loudly, not always quickly, but surely and deeply. He reveals himself to those who are not satisfied with shadows, to those who do not want just the idea of God, but God himself. This longing, quiet, persistent, holy, is not a weakness to be silenced. It is a sign, a mark upon the soul. It means he has called you closer. It means you were made to know him not from a distance, but face to face. Some of the deepest wounds are carved by rejection. When love is withheld, when presence is withdrawn, when doors close quietly, without explanation, it can feel like failure, like being unseen, unheard, unloved. And yet, in the kingdom of God, rejection is often the beginning of something sacred, not the end of it. Many who are called by God walk through seasons where they are misunderstood, overlooked, even cast aside. Not because they lack value, but because the world does not yet have eyes to see what is holy. There is a hidden mercy in the doors that do not open, in the friendships that fade, in the invitations that never come. What feels like loss may in truth be protection. When Jesus came to his own, they did not receive him. He was the fulfillment of prophecy, the light of the world, and yet he was dismissed, mocked, pushed away. The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. He knew rejection not just once but many times, and yet each time the rejection placed him more firmly in his purpose. Those who carry a divine calling often carry a trail of closed doors behind them, not because they are cursed, but because they are covered. When God sets someone apart, he is careful with their path. He will not allow them to settle in spaces that are too small for what he is building in them. He will not allow them to remain where their soul will shrink or their fire will dim. What feels like abandonment may be alignment. What feels like being cast out may be the Spirit leading you in. There are places you were not meant to stay, no matter how much you gave. There are people who were never meant to carry your heart. And though it hurts, God sees what is ahead. He knows the weight of your calling. He guards it like treasure. Each rejection may be God's gentle way of turning your face back to Him, not to isolate, but to refine, not to punish, but to prepare. The ache in your chest is not the end of your story. It is the shaping of it. And those who walk through rejection with open hands often carry a nearness to Christ that comfort could never give, because He too was rejected. And in that rejection, He became the foundation of grace. There is a kind of soul that does not seek noise. It walks gently towards silence, not out of fear, but out of longing. It is drawn to quiet places, not to escape the world, but to hear something deeper than the world can offer. This is the pull of the wilderness, not a desert of despair, but a sacred space where stillness lives, where thoughts settle like dust, and God's presence begins to rise. Some hearts were never made for the spotlight. They were made for the secret place. While others find their strength in the crowd, these hearts find peace in the pause. They are drawn to mornings before the sun rises, to rooms where prayers echo softly, to long walks without words, where only the breath of creation keeps them company. In these spaces, the soul is not alone. It is seen, and it is spoken to. When Elijah stood on the mountain, the wind tore through the rocks, the earth shook beneath him, fire blazed before his eyes. But God was not in the wind, nor the quake, nor the flame. He came after, in the still small voice, gentle, barely above a whisper. And yet it was in that voice that the prophet found what he needed most, not a command, but a comfort. Not a plan, but a presence. The wilderness is not a punishment. It is often a place of preparation. Moses met God in the wilderness. So did Hagar. So did John the Baptist. Each one pulled away from the noise, so they could hear what could not be heard anywhere else. Solitude is not emptiness. It is a sanctuary. It is where God removes the layers the world has placed upon the soul and reveals who He truly is and who we truly are in Him. Some are called to deeper quiet because they are called to deeper communion. Their spirit cannot be fed by surface noise. They must go where others will not go, into silence, into stillness, into the hidden places where heaven speaks without words. To be drawn to solitude is not to be strange, it is to be called. And those who walk that path, the quiet ones, the waiting ones, often hear what others miss, not because they are better, but because they are listening. And God still speaks to those who will sit long enough to hear Him. Some people carry a light that cannot be hidden. It is not loud, it is not proud, but it shines in quiet ways, through honesty, tenderness, and a deep longing for what is good. And yet, that very light often draws resistance, not because it is wrong, but because it reveals. It stirs what others would rather keep asleep. It unsettles what is false. And so, the one who carries it may find themselves questioned, dismissed, or even attacked. To be misunderstood for simply being true is a sorrow many chosen ones carry. The depth in their heart is mistaken for strangeness. Their honesty feels too sharp for comfort. Their dreams are called too big, too much, too unrealistic. But they are not trying to be anything other than who they were made to be. Still, the criticism comes. Still, the rejection falls like rain. And with it, the quiet ache. Why is just being myself so hard? There is a reason the enemy presses hardest against those marked by God. He does not aim his arrows at the ones who walk without purpose. He looks for those who carry promise, those whose lives, if fully surrendered, would break chains and bring light to dark corners. The weight of spiritual warfare is often a reflection of spiritual calling. Jesus was pure, full of grace and truth, and still he was accused, misread, betrayed. His goodness did not shield him from hatred, it stirred it, because light will always trouble the dark. And those who walk in his spirit will feel the same tension, not because they've failed, but because they reflect something the world does not know how to hold. When attacks come, not for what has been done wrong, but for what is true and sincere, the soul may grow weary. But hidden within that pain is a quiet confirmation. Heaven sees, and so does hell. And both know the weight of what you carry. The enemy attacks not to wound you, but to distract you from who you truly are, from what God is forming in your life. To be opposed is not always a curse. Sometimes it is a signpost, a mark that your life is not ordinary, that your presence shifts things, that your voice matters more than you know. And though it hurts, there is glory in walking the path Christ walked, the path of light, misunderstood but never extinguished. There comes a quiet moment when the ache begins to turn, when the questions no longer carry the same weight, when the loneliness starts to feel like a doorway, not a wall. Something begins to stir, not loud, not sudden, but steady, like the rising of morning light. It is the Spirit awakening what has always been there, not a new calling, but an old one. Not a new identity, but one that has waited patiently beneath the surface. You were chosen before the pain, before the silence, before the wandering years. Chosen not because of strength or status, but because of the heart that kept reaching through it all. The heart that knelt when it was tired. The heart that stayed soft even when it was bruised. You did not choose me, but I chose you, said Jesus. A quiet truth, yet it carries the weight of heaven. To walk in chosenness is not to carry pride. It is to walk with peace, to no longer seek approval from voices that could never name you, to no longer shrink in the presence of those who once doubted you. It is to rise gently, knowing that you are held, that you are led, that the one who called you is faithful. This is not about proving anyone wrong. It is not about making a name or seeking applause. It is about surrender, about stepping fully into the design that was written over your life before breath filled your lungs, about saying yes not to a platform, but to the potter's hands. Many are called, but few are willing to walk slowly enough to be formed. Few are willing to be hidden, to be refined, to be emptied of what the world values. But those who wait, those who yield, they begin to carry something the world cannot give, a light that does not flicker, a peace that does not move, a strength that is quiet but unshakable. God is awakening you not for noise, but for nearness, not for success, but for service, not to carry a title, but to carry his presence into the places that need it most. You are not being elevated. You are being entrusted. And now, as your spirit begins to rise, it is not ambition that leads you, it is love, it is peace. It is the soft but certain voice of the one who chose you long before the world ever saw you. There is a quiet strength in knowing who you are and whose you are. The path you've walked has not been wasted. The silence, the sorrow, the solitude, they were shaping you, not breaking you. You were not forgotten in those moments. You were being formed by gentle hands, set apart for something sacred. God does not call the loudest or the most seen. He calls the willing, the tender, the ones who still listen, even after being hurt, the ones who keep loving, even when love is not returned. These are the ones he trusts with his presence. These are the ones he marks as his own. You have felt like the black sheep, but in the eyes of heaven you are the chosen one, not to stand above but to kneel in love, not to shine for yourself, but to carry his light where others cannot go. And now, you are being called into that truth, gently, steadily, completely. You are not behind. You are right on time, and what God has planted in your life will grow. If this message has spoken to your heart, we invite you to gently support this space by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It helps us continue sharing words of peace and purpose with those who need them most. Walk in peace. You are chosen and you are deeply loved.